Guys, I'm going to be honest. Butch Jones is one of my favorite college football coaches of all time, and I truly do wish he was still on the sidelines as a head coach. I know Tennessee fans have mixed opinions on Butch, but as an outsider, he was one of the most passionate and memorable college football coaches in recent memory. Sadly, his tenure didn't go as planned at Tennessee, but I want to talk about the rise of his coaching career, his tenure at Tennessee, and what he's up to today. We will cover all of that and more, but first, if you're new to the channel and love college football, this is 100% the place for you, and I ask you guys to subscribe. Let me know what I should do next down in the comment section, and also don't forget to turn on post notifications so you never miss another upload of mine. Now let's get started with the rise and fall of Butch Jones. To truly tell the Butch Jones story, we need to go all the way back to when Butch Jones was born in Michigan. Football was in his blood from a young age, and he had become a high school football star. He was talented enough to play college football as he joined the team at Ferris State. Ferris State is a Division II school located in Big Rapids, Michigan, but they haven't exactly been known as a football school. In 1986 and 1987, he became a two-time letterman as a running back, but he always knew he wanted to be a coach. Upon graduation, he actually interned with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and he loved coaching even more after that. In 1990, he would actually join the staff at Rutgers as a graduate assistant. After doing okay there, he took the offensive coordinator job at Wilkes University. He'd helped the school make a deep run in the Division III playoffs, and in 1995, he returned back to his alma mater at Ferris State. He became the offensive coordinator and made the Bulldogs the best offense in Division II for 3 straight years. Butch Jones was an up-and-coming coach, and he became the tight ends coach at Central Michigan. He would coach running backs for a few seasons and then become the team's primary play caller. Rich Rodriguez noticed his talent and hired him to be a wide receivers coach for the Mountaineers. After seeing success there, he returned back to Central Michigan, this time as their head coach. In his first year as the head coach, the Chippewas posted an 8-6 record, and he led them to the MAC title game. In year 2, he led them to an 8-5 record, and he was a coach on the rise. He helped lead the program to monumental wins over Northern Illinois and rival Western Michigan by the time year 3 had passed. The Chippewas had gone 11-2, and at one point were ranked number 24 in the country. Before he could coach his bowl game, he decided to leave Central Michigan and take the head coaching job at Cincinnati. Michigan State's Mark D'Antonio and Notre Dame's Brian Kelly were his predecessors, and the Bearcats were one of the top group of 5 schools in college football, so he definitely had big shoes to fill. His first season, he had some rebuilding to do, as he led the team to a 4-8 record, but he was going to get it together. In his second season, he led the Bearcats to a 10-3 record with a win in the Liberty Bowl, and they were ranked as high as number 21 in the country at one point. Butch had gotten it together, and by year 3, he had a ton of hype. The Bearcats would go 9-3 once again, and were ranked as high as number 22 in the country, but Butch would not coach their bowl game once again, because he was off to another job. After declining an offer to be the next head coach at Colorado, Jones waited for a big-time job to open up, and he got his wish. Charlie Strong chose Texas over Tennessee, and eventually the Tennessee Athletic Department chose Butch Jones to be their next head coach. This was a dream job for Jones, and he said Tennessee was the premier college football school in the country. After disasters with Lane Kiffin and Derek Dooley, Tennessee was ready to find that guy to put him back on top. Going into the 2013 season, Butch had brought a completely new staff to Rocky Top, so there wasn't a whole lot of experience there, which may have been his first issue. Jones's first recruiting class was headlined by wide receiver Marquez North, and he brought in 2 quarterbacks to battle it out in the future. His highest rated guy was Josh Dobbs, who had gone to become the team's star, and then there was Riley Ferguson, another guy who would become a star, but for Memphis instead. Nathan Peterman, a name you guys probably recognize, and Justin Worley were the 2 starting quarterbacks at the time, but Josh Dobbs would get a chance to play as a freshman. Rajon Neal was a star at running back, and Alexander Johnson was the star linebacker for the team. The Vols started out 2-0, but they were in for a reality check as they faced off with number 2 Oregon and number 19 Florida in back-to-back weeks. They were going to get blown out in both of those matchups, and this was definitely a wake-up call for them. After a win over South Alabama, they lost in overtime to Georgia, and they would finally take the next step. The following week, they would get their first big win in the Butch Jones era, as they beat number 11 South Carolina by way of a game-winning field goal. This got the fan base pumped, and they would have a chance to fix their season. Unfortunately, they would lose to Bama, Missouri, Auburn, and Vanderbilt, and they were at 7 losses already, but they would win their season finale to finish with a 5-7 record. The first year was a bit disappointing, but what Butch was doing on the recruiting trail had everyone in the college football world on notice. Headlined by Jalen Hurd and Josh Malone, the 2014 recruiting class was ranked number 7 in the country by 24/7 Sports, and there was a lot of young talent on the roster. The entire coaching staff was retained for the first time since 2007, and this was supposed to be a big year. Justin Worley would get injured at times, and Josh Dobbs would get a chance to start a few games. Just like the last year, they had an early season test as they were set to play Oklahoma, Georgia, and Florida in the coming weeks. They would lose all 3 of those games, but they did show progress. In the Vols' last 7 games, they would play 3 ranked teams and they would lose to all 3 of them. This was very disappointing and began to sum up the Butch Jones era. They would win those other 4 games though, and they won their bowl game against Iowa. Jalen Hurd had emerged as a young star, the program had a ton of hype, and they once again brought in another good recruiting class, so he was given a pass. The 2015 class was number 4 in the country, and included 5-star recruits Khalil McKenzie and Kyle Phillips, plus they brought in Alabama transfer Alvin Kamara. Mike DeBoard was brought in as the new offensive coordinator, and Tennessee finally looked like they were going to turn the corner. Josh Dobbs was the full-time starter at quarterback, and Jalen Hurd was the star running back, but they didn't have a go-to receiver, which would be something that would plague the team. They opened up the season at number 25 in the polls, and they beat Bowling Green for what would become the biggest game of the Butch Jones era to this point. They were matched up with number 19 Oklahoma and took an early lead. Sadly for the Vols, Baker Mayfield had his coming out game and led the Sooners to a double overtime victory. This was absolutely heartbreaking for Tennessee fans, and I remember that game personally. It was a lot of fun. This was a major blow to Butch's reputation so far, and the fan base kind of felt let down. From there, they lost back-to-back close games against Florida and Arkansas, and they were once again in a hole. Josh Dobbs would lead them to a huge win over number 19 Georgia, before they lost a really close game to Alabama. They were going to destroy number 12 Northwestern in the Outback Bowl, and despite the poor start, Butch would make up for his teams and get another chance. The 2016 class was another top 15 class and included Butch Jones' next quarterback in Jarek Guarantano. There was a ton of hype around the program, and they started out ranked number 9 in the country. Unfortunately, both Jalen Hurd and Alvin Kamara were gone now, so Josh Kelly was the new running back. They opened up the season in a weird game against Appalachian State, in which it took a couple miracles for them to win. They fell in the polls a bit, and then played against Virginia Tech in Bristol Motor Speedway, which, fun fact, has the record for fan attendance ever. They then took care of Ohio before they finally beat Florida for the first time in years. It seemed everything was going their way, as they were 4-0 and had a date with number 25 Georgia in Athens. In one of my favorite games of all time, Jacob Eason threw an absolute bomb to Riley Ridley late in the game, and it looked like Georgia was going to win. After a weird kickoff return and a penalty, Josh Dobbs completed a Hail Mary pass to Juwan Jennings, and Tennessee survived and won the game. This was my favorite moment of the Butch Jones era, as he fell to the field sobbing after the win. The Tennessee Miracle season was still alive and well, but they had a really tough test in College Station the next week. Against number 8 Texas A&M, they pulled off a few late-game miracles, but they ended up losing in double overtime. From there, their title hopes went completely down the drain as they lost to Alabama and South Carolina, and all of a sudden, they were gone from the polls. The run was over just as quickly as it started. They would win 3 straight games to get back to number 24 in the polls, but they then lost to Vanderbilt to finish the season, and the fan base wasn't exactly too happy about that. They would beat number 24 Nebraska in the Music City Bowl, and they finished at a disappointing 9-4 record. I say disappointing because to the standards the team had, it was pretty disappointing. The 2017 class was 17th in the country, which was good, but they were starting to fall off a bit. Without Dobbs, they would need a new quarterback, and it was going to be an absolute mess at that position this year. It would be a 3-man battle between Jarek Guarantano, Quentin Dormady, and Will McBride. JG and Dormady would go back and forth, and the mediocre quarterback play led to poor on-field results. They did beat Georgia Tech in the Chick-fil-A kickoff game in double overtime week 1, but the rest of the season was a disaster, to put it lightly. They went 0-8 in SEC play, and the Volunteers looked absolutely terrible in every game. Vanderbilt was better than them. On November 12th, the Board of Trustees had enough, and Butch Jones was asked to resign, and he did so. This was really sad for Butch, and Brady Hoke was named the interim head coach for the remainder of the season. In case you guys didn't know, Brady Hoke was at Michigan and was kind of in a similar spot as Butch Jones was, so I'll be doing a video on Hoke sometime in the near future. Since then, Butch has been an assistant coach at Alabama, proving he is still a valuable person in the college football coaching world. So why exactly did Butch Jones fail to succeed at Tennessee? Well, here's my opinion. I think he was a good coach, but he was never supposed to be that guy that bring a team from ruins to a title. He was a good recruiter, but he wasn't amazing with X's and O's, and his staff was never anything special. He had so many talented players such as Preston Williams, Alvin Kamara, and even Josh Dobbs, but they just never really panned out. He also never really had a go-to wide receiver ever. Butch lost a lot of big games and close games during his tenure, and that infuriated the fan base. He had very talented teams, but he could never get them over that hump and actually compete for the SEC East. The truth is, Butch Jones was an above-average coach with a caring personality, but he was definitely in over his head with Tennessee's expectations. Had he gone to a school such as Kentucky, South Carolina, or Missouri, just some SEC East examples, I think he could have been a better coach and would have had a little bit of a longer leash. But with the history and tradition of Rocky Top football, he wasn't going to be given that luxury. I wish the best for Butch Jones, as I really loved how much he cared about the game and his players, and I actually really liked Tennessee football during that era. Butch is an iconic coach from this decade of college football, and you have to at least give him credit for stabilizing and rebuilding the Tennessee program. I think Jeremy Pruitt is going to do big things here, and you partially have to thank Butch Jones for that. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video, and if you did, be sure to smash that like button, as these videos take forever to make, and it's really what I love to do, so hitting that like button, I really appreciate that. Also, be sure to let me know what coach I should do next. I love hearing you guys' suggestions, and I want to know what I should do. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new, and check out my video about the rise of former Miami coach Al Golden. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.